So I've never been to a Ren fair, mostly because there usually aren't any in my area, but apparently this year a bunch have been popping up in the city, and most importantly, there's a mini fantasy meetup called Rodents of the Realm being hosted by some of my friends, and I've always wanted to make my own costume and dress up and get super fancy and go to a Ren fair, so finally my opportunity has come. Here are my plans so far. Because it is being hosted by Rodents of the Realm, I thought it'd be fun to make a little rat hand puppet. He is a jester, he is a singing rat, he is very talented, I know. But as you may be able to tell, I don't really have too many plans for my own costume, so let's get working on that. Hi, my name is Emily, and I am an intermediate seamstress. My original aspiration for this project was to use some of the fabrics I already owned since my stash is overflowing, but unfortunately I happened to go to the thrift store where I was pleased to see the Halloween section in full blast and also these extremely enticing costume patterns, and I came across this fabric and I just couldn't help myself. I just couldn't pass it up. It's just so beautiful, regal, medieval. There was a very nice employee there who excitedly was trying to show me how to use this as a sari, only to discover it is definitely not long enough to be a sari. But she seemed pretty excited, so am I. Look at these beautiful flower crisscrosses. Look how sparkly and pretty and golden. And then we've got the golden trim on the side that I could harvest. So I got 2 of these. These are $4 a piece. And then I also got just a bunch of golden trim because I could never find any in thrift store. So this time I just grabbed whichever one I saw. This is for Christmas. Isn't it wild that they're already putting up Christmas stuff? I don't actually hate Christmas as much as other people do, but I think August is a little early. And I'm saying this as someone who used to work retail. But anyway, golden trim. And I also have this velvety green fabric that my sister gave me, and maybe we could find a way to utilize this as well. Anyway, I initially wanted to be a court jester. I don't know what's happening to this guy's butt. Seems like he needs some help. But then I also came across these more casual dresses, and I love the simplicity of them, especially considering I don't have that much time to make an outfit. Alright, so here's what I got. Number 1, we've got the simple design. I'm gonna see if I can find any linen / translucent white fabric for the puffy sleeves. A little decorative embroidery thing in the middle. Beaded head trim. I saw that online. It's very pretty. I don't know if I'll be able to make it. And yellow stockings because I happen to have some. Loafers and frilly socks. And for the second look, which is the very extra jester look, green velvet for the head hood area. I do have some yellow fabric I can make the sleeves out of. Very fancy stocking. But alas, I decided against the jester look as there was a high chance of it still being really hot at the end of September, and the jester fit would be way too stuffy, whereas the casual maiden look would be much breezier. And so I went off to the thrift store once again, this time with a purpose. I wanted to see the shoe selection, and I wanted to find a pair of frilly white socks. So I just got back from the thrift store. I didn't manage to find any frilly socks yet, but I did find this adorable little wicker basket purse thing. I know I said I would try making my own bag, but this is just so cute and it was only $1. So I just grabbed it in case I wanted to use it. And then this is completely unrelated to this project. I got a shirt that says Fruit Loops on it. Well, the lighting is so bad here. So in terms of white fabric for the sleeves, I did dig up a bunch from my stash. So firstly, we have this pair of pants with broken zippers. I think it could work. It is very nice and cool. I don't know what material it is, but it feels like it'll be really nice if it ends up being really hot on that day. The only problem is just that it's not as see-through as I would like it to be. This is just some random fabric that I was gonna use for pattern making. I have this very similar linen, I guess you'd call it. It also feels very nice and cool on my skin. Also not as transparent as I would like it to be. I have a bunch of random curtain fabrics. This one, unfortunately, is not big enough for 2 sleeves, 2 puffy sleeves, I should say. But otherwise, it would have been so pretty and ethereal. I think this is a tablecloth. It is very transparent, as you can see, so this one's a strong contender. And then lastly, I have this huge panel of curtains that I've been saving up for a few years to make a fantasy gown out of. But there's so much of this material that I feel like it would be okay if I took just like a little bit of it. After comparing the various fabrics to the main red fabric though, I eliminated half of it for being too crisp and white and set my mind on using the big curtain panel for the sleeves. And then, for some reason, I decided to do more sketches at 11 PM, which only resulted in decision paralysis the next day. But since I'll need a bodice no matter what, I decided to start drafting it first. So I got these fashion rulers from the thrift store a while back, $2, and I have no idea how to use them, but I figured this would be a good project to start learning how to use them. I'm presuming you would use this curvy one to trace out this sleeve hole. I feel like I'm panicking too much about this for no reason. I just need to be calm. I need to be zen. Ignore those two baby porgs down there. What I really wanted was princess seams, which is really hard to do on my body because I don't exactly have princess curves. And also, I need to make a solid decision on whether I want it to be one continuous dress or if I want it to be separated top and bottom like this. Okay. Princess seams. I feel like they're mostly decorative, but they're there. And so I snipped the pattern apart according to the new princess seams. And also I decided to have the top and bottom separated because I really like the structure of this inspo photo from Firefly Path, and I feel like that can only really be achieved if they are separate. Once again using a dice to mark out the 1/2 inch seam allowance. Maybe I'll add the back as well. With the bodice mock-up pieces all cut out, I just sewed them together and did a test fit. I liked the way things were coming along, but I did add a dart to the back just to close up this bagginess. I was also careful not to take away too much of the slack because there will be games at this event, and I would like to participate in them without destroying my costume. And then, still using that white dress as a base, I drafted out the skirt portion of the dress and then sewed everything together. So definitely some issues. Well, first of all, I noticed that the back panel of the skirt did not match the width of the back panel, so I had to stretch the fabric a lot, which is doable for this fabric, but definitely would not be for the red fabric. And also, I definitely grossly underestimated how wide to make the dress, because I was just tracing it off of the pre-existing dress, so I assumed it would work, but man, look at this tape galore. I added about 1 inch down the middle to make up the difference between this back panel and the top back panel. I added this extra triangle on the side to add some more body, and then I trimmed it down by about 3 inches so that it's more to a length that I like. And now I just have to do the same modifications on the bottom and side to the front piece. Alright, everything is all fixed. I know that ideally I should cut this out on another mock-up fabric and make sure everything will fit. Unfortunately, this is the amount of mock-up fabric I have left, and that's definitely not enough. I am fairly confident that this will work because I think it will. With that very strong vote of confidence, perhaps too strong, I began cutting out the pieces in the lining fabric. Yeah, I figured if anything went wrong, at least it will be on the inside. I used the cool feeling linen as the upper lining and some mystery white stretchy lining fabric as the skirt lining. Front, sides, and back. And now I'm going to iron these. So typically this is when I'd sew up the sides, but because I want to layer the sleeves between the lining and the outer layer so all the raw edges get encapsulated in one fell swoop, it's going to require a very specific order of operations, so I'd rather leave the sides unsewn for now just in case I shouldn't do it yet. And once it seemed like nothing was going wrong, I finally broke out my red fancy fabric. But first I had to remove the gold ribbon trim to maximize the real estate. Gold ribbon, lining, and finally, the fabric, all freed. So I took my underbed storage out to get something from under my bed, and Mika has discovered the magic of the underbed realm. Is he gonna go back inside? Yep. Anyway, I wasn't happy with the angle of the bottom curve of the skirt, so I made a little change to it, just so it looks more like a proper circle skirt. Mika, are you having fun in there? So anyway, it was time to cut the real deal. So after cutting the fabric, there is a lot of little tinsels and sequin shrapnels everywhere. Can you see them? Yikes. That's hair. I'm going to be really careful and handle this fabric as little as possible because I don't want more carnage and I also don't want the embroidery to unravel. Firstly, I'm going to put together the bodice. Now to sew together the sides of the skirt. This is all just pinned together for now, but I think it's turning out pretty good. Now the next step should be attaching this to the lining, but as I said before, I'm going to try to attach the sleeve between the lining and the outer layer, so we gotta get working on the sleeves first. By the way, this fabric is indeed extremely scratchy on the underside. I could feel it around my armholes here. I can even feel it through my tank top, it feels like. Very unpleasant. Milo, I'm filming here. That's the end of this update. I'm covered with red fur. God, this room is going to need an extensive vacuuming after this. As enamored as I was by the extra sketches I did at 11 p.m, I opted for the regular puff sleeves since I'm going to be toting around a rat, and that rat is going to have his own costume, so I'd better make sure my sleeve doesn't overshadow him. Now, if we were making a normal sleeve, this would do. A little tight maybe, but it'll work. But we're making a puff sleeve, and in order to achieve that, we need to perform some magic. And said magic involved cutting the sleeve into 4 parts and spreading them out. So in that sense, I guess I didn't need to make a super accurate pattern of my arm, but what's done is done. Since I ran out of that mock-up fabric, I decided to cannibalize a dress mock-up to make the sleeve mock-up. To gather the puffs, I know typically you would use elastic, but I didn't have enough, so I just used a strong piece of thread and manually gathered it. I believe this is a good proof of concept. So I took apart the sleeve and cut it out on the sheer curtain fabric. And then I took my washable marker and drew out some equidistant puffs. If you can see the blue lines I just drew, I would be very, very impressed. I was at a driving test today, not the driving part, just the test part, and part of the test was the color blindness test, and this is probably what it looked like to me. And the weird thing is, I am not colorblind. They just made the test really hard for some reason. But anyway, let's get back to the sewing. Here I am using white embroidery floss to gather up the sleeves. And now to hide this ugliness and to make this super extra, I'm going to layer on some of this white lace and then also this pearl garland. I think the puffs look a lot more defined with the lace on it. I also gathered the top of the sleeve to fit the sleeve hole. And I know technically I should start making the other sleeve right now, but I kind of want to try attaching it to the bodice just to make sure it works. What do you think, Mix? So here's the order of operations. First, outer shell, second, mica, second, sleeve, and lastly, topping it all off with the lining, which I can't untangle one-handed. Step 1, basting the sleeve to the outer shell. Look how cute it is. Look at this, guys. It's so cute. I wish the background wasn't so messy so you could get a proper look at it, but that's what the final reveal is for. This lining thing isn't working out the way I thought it would. I think I'm just going to sew up the sides of the outer shell and the sleeve, and then at the end, after I've closed all the sides, I'll have to hand sew the armhole of the lining onto the shell. That's the only way I can think of that will work. Closing this up, and now I just have to hem it and then add the pearls. So I finished... Oh my god, it's almost midnight and I can't think of words. So I finished binding the raw edge of the sleeve with this cute little lace from this bundle right here. Nice beige creamy color. And like I said, it is almost midnight and I should probably go to sleep, but I really want to see what this sleeve looks like with pearls on. So I'm gonna do one and see what's up. I love how extra this is. It is the next morning. I have to go somewhere in an hour and a half, so let's see if I can get at least the structure of the sleeve done. So the structure of the sleeve is done. I have 30 minutes before I have to go. Let's see if I can get all the lace on there. Alright, I got all the lace attached. I gotta head out now. I'm back. So I'm going to hem, that's the word I couldn't think of last night. Anyway, I'm going to hem the sleeve with, once again, the flowery lace. And then I'm presumably going to spend the whole night attaching pearl trim to everything. Now it's time for hemming. And since I didn't explain it too well last time, first I sewed the lace to the wrong side of the sleeve and then flipped it over to the right side and stitched it down. That encapsulates the raw edge all nice and pretty. Ta-da! Okay, next step. What should the next step be? Attaching the pearls to the arms. Right, how could I forget that already? No, I miscalculated the length. Luckily for me, I do have an extra bit somewhere. Ta-da! If you're wondering what this is just a business card holder that I got at a thrift store the other day. It's wood carved, it's got these little mother of pearl inlays, and it's so beautiful. Now I have to do the other arm. As you may have seen just now, this outfit is a little difficult to put on because it has no stretch whatsoever. But other than that, it does fit and it looks super cool. So I guess the next step now is to attach the skirt. Easy peasy. I think we can get that done tonight. But as it turned out, it was not easy peasy as Mika did not want me to go to work.
Excuse me, baby. Go over there for a second.
I can't tell if it's because it's especially warm today or if it's because I was doing a lot of sewing and sewing is an extreme sport, or if it's because this material is probably all polyester, but I'm feeling really sweaty and warm right now. I feel like this should fit fine. Hard to say until I get the lining on and actually put the buttons on and stuff. Man, what if I made it too tight? How am I gonna do games and activities? Ooh, flexing forward might be a little hard. Okay, well, we'll deal with that when it comes to that. So I was looking through my button stash to see if I can find any matching buttons because I'll need a lot of them. And I found a bunch of these white pearly ones that I thought would be fun to mix and match. So shiny. And then I also got these two fancy black buttons that I thought would work as an accent piece. At the very top, maybe not this one because it's silver, but this one. So this incongruous white blob is the lining, which I've also sewn together, and I've also stay stitched the armholes in preparation for when I hand sew it to the outer shell. Can you see it? It's like white on white, so just trust me, it's there. Although the original plan was to do traditional buttonholes, on the fly I decided I wanted to do elastic loops, which required me to sew the loops between the shell and the lining. Based on these very accurate calculations, we'll need about 15 buttons about 2 inches apart. I have silver, which technically could work, or I have this very small amount of gold elastic. I did the math. If I do 1.5 inch loops, then I will have enough of this gold elastic. Surprisingly, I couldn't find any tips and tricks about how to sew elastic loops, but luckily for me, I've seen Rachel Maxey do it before, so I just did what she did. First, I applied interfacing to the lining, then I marked out the buttonholes, and sewed the elastic to the right side of the fabric facing inward. I used a very slender needle for this so that I could pierce the elastic more easily and stitched around the elastic several times to really anchor them in place. This didn't take as long as I thought it would, which was a huge relief. So finally, I've got all the loop-de-loops sewn on. I made the second loop slightly bigger so that it can fit the black fancy button. Now we can finally attach this to the outer shell. I mean, I would start working on it, except somebody took up my workspace. By the way, this is the amount of gold elastic I have left. And so I began sewing. I closed every edge except for the bottom, which I attached the original gold ribbon to, and then hemmed the lining separately. It was just too much of a nightmare trying to sew the non-stretchy fabric to a stretchy fabric. I do not recommend it. I noticed, however, that the gold ribbon acted like horsehair braids and it really poofed out the skirt, which I didn't hate per se, but it was definitely unexpected and meant the skirt had a stiffer look rather than a soft, natural flowiness. Hemming! But anyway, then I trimmed off the excess seam allowance and hand-stitched the sleeve holes. Before, after. No more rough edges, buttery smooth. So I did an oopsie where I accidentally cut off some of the thread that was holding the elastic loops in place. So I spent about 10 minutes fixing this top one because it fell out. And I don't know how many other loops are affected by this, but otherwise this is all looking very clean, very nice. I tried it on and I'm very pleased with the fact that the fabric no longer scratches my armpits, so that's good. We are in the final throes of this dress. Today on the docket, we just have to top stitch everything, and then finally it's button time, baby. So here we are, all the lining tucked away. There's a bit peeking around the corners, but I think it's fine. And now it's button time. Buttons turned out so freaking good. I'm kind of not liking how much the dress flares out. Maybe I did make it too froofy, but I can live with it, it's fine. And then all that was left to make were the accessories. And with all of that done, it is finally time for the final reveal. So as you may have been able to tell, I did not find any frilly socks for this costume, for this video at least. I think the green stockings is good enough. I think it's fine. The dress is not as unagile as I thought it would be, which is nice, but I guess we won't really know until I actually get to do games and activities. The shoes I just borrowed from my sister. I don't think I'll wear them to the actual event because wearing heels on public transit is not exactly a good combo for me. But now you might be wondering, where's the rat? Don't worry, that's what we're going to be tackling in the next video. Put this down. See you then. Bye!